It gives me pleasure to rise and speak this evening towards the end of this session and on the budget debate. Mr. Speaker, if the country had not just moved out of recession, the last speaker might have pushed it straight back where it came from. Now, what I'd like to say was, really listening to the content, that was nothing but a miserable speech. There was nothing good in the budget the last member suggested to us. And in fact, my advice is pick up the newspapers, have a look on the internet at what happened just after the budget was announced, and get back in touch with what New Zealanders said. No, I certainly don't think it's funny, but there wasn't a lot of humour in your speech, which is why many people in New Zealand turned the TV off, I would have thought.
Point of order. Point of order, sorry. Honourable
Speaker, you didn't make a speech, and this member's now been here, I think, for nearly a year, and should know better.
Holier than that.
Well, look,
I understand.
the member is not the only one that transgresses, and members from this House do it as well. If it's and they need to tidy up a little bit in that regard on both sides of the House. Let's have a general warning. Todd McClay.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and thank you for the correction, and I apologise. I certainly don't think you're humorous either. Can I suggest, Mr. Speaker, that this is a good budget? It was warmly I was speaking to the Speaker.
Point of order. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't finish a sentence before he insulted you by saying he didn't think you were serious. I mean, I just wonder, sir, whether an IQ test should be applied before the member enters the chamber.
Look, no, you mustn't attack members when you make a point of order. Then I think that the purpose of the point of order is to attack the member, not to address a matter of the order of the House. So that is also misbehaving. Todd McClay. Be careful.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Look, I think it was a good budget. It was warmly received by New Zealand. All you need to do is turn on the TV the next night or look at the newspaper. Up to 80% of...
All you need to do is turn on the TV. Another sentence he couldn't...
I was speaking to the Speaker. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Point of order. Todd McClay.
Mr. Speaker, a little clarification, because the member officer is right. I am a little newer in this House than he is. If I'm addressing you, I can talk to the Speaker as you, can I not?
If a member is speaking to the Speaker, they should say Mr. Speaker. And the pronoun you gives us all sorts of problems. And members will get on better by desisting from using that pronoun you. Todd McClay.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. All we had to do was turn on the television and look at the newspaper the very next morning, and we would see that 80% of New Zealanders thought that this was a good budget. Positive headlines throughout the country, people saying, Mr. Speaker, that it was a responsible budget. It had vision for the New Zealand economy, and that after many, many years we could see where the country was going, and it was moving in a positive direction. Now, I understand the opposition needs to oppose everything, and they need they have the need to feel that they should be negative about these things. But sadly, Mr. Speaker, I've come to the conclusion, following the debate the last few weeks, that few people, if any, in New Zealand are listening. In fact, if we look at the media coverage in New Zealand that came from the opposition in the days after the budget, one might assume there was much, much more coverage in the last week than there was then, and I would agree with members opposite that this budget was very, very important for New Zealand. Now, as I said, Mr. Speaker, it had vision. First and foremost, the budget was about getting fast and sustainable economic growth back in New Zealand. That's one of the most important things that we campaigned on, and one of the most important things we can deliver for New Zealanders, because it's the only way that we can get the higher paying jobs and opportunities in this country for hard-working Kiwis. It's the only way we're going to keep people in my electorate and other people's electorates, and indeed the only way we're going to get hard-working Kiwis who have gone overseas over the last 9 years because they felt there wasn't enough opportunity in New Zealand to return to our shores and work hard for our country. We have a poor track record in New Zealand. Even before the global recession hit, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand was already in a recession of its own, and growth was very slow. That's because for far too many years this country has relied upon borrowing and consumption and unsustainable increases in government spending. Well, Mr. Speaker, this budget certainly addresses that and it delivers for New Zealanders. The budget will help turn around that around, so we have faster growth from savings and from export and from productive investment. Now, we're focused on good fiscal management. Like everyone, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand can't spend more than it earns. We've done that for far too many years already, and we've moved through with this budget from what was to be a decade of deficits returning to surpluses as forecast by Treasury by 2016, something that New Zealand businesses, but New Zealanders as a whole, have welcomed. We're also moving in the right direction, Mr. Speaker, as we're seeing confidence in business return, and certainly a reduction in unemployment, although I would suggest I think we have some way still to go on this. But all members of the House would have been happy, Mr. Speaker, when we saw only a month ago reductions in unemployment throughout New Zealand from 7 to 6% at the end of the first quarter, and certainly in my electorate of Rotorua, significant reductions of unemployment, and particularly pleasing was amongst younger people, Mr. Speaker, who were finding jobs and moving away from benefits. We're also looking to help New Zealand families in this. During the economic slowdown or downturn, Mr. Speaker, we maintained entitlements, and the budget says that we're going to continue to do that. We're compensating Kiwis for the small increase in GST, and this includes beneficiaries, low-income families, and people on the super. We're making changes to how we do these things to help these people, and this budget very much is about helping them to help themselves also. Now, Mr. Speaker, a number of changes in the budget, particularly around tax, a fairer tax system that helps the economy grow. There's a great feeling for that in the community. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the Minister of Finance, Bill English, came to my electorate and held a lunch in Rotorua days after the budget. The Chamber of Commerce hosted this lunch. More than 150 people came along to hear about the budget, to hear the Minister of Finance speak. And by comparison, one only needs to cast their mind back to last year when the Leader of the Opposition came to hold a similar lunch with the Chamber of Commerce, and I think there were 6 people who registered, and very sadly for the people of Rotorua, that had to be cancelled. So the business people of Rotorua weren't able to hear the wisdom for the Leader of the Opposition, but at least 150 of them came to see Mr. English and listen to him, and the feedback was very positive. In fact, the Daily Post wrote a very good article talking to those that had been in the room, some who were employers who had their own business, others who were employees and came along. The feedback was very positive, Mr. Speaker. These people in Rotorua, hard-working people in Rotorua, realise that the country has to move in a direction where people have greater opportunity and there's greater support for jobs and for businesses. Well, this budget does that. High-quality frontline public services to be delivered, strong, sustainable economic growth, and getting value for the taxpayer dollar. Well, won't that be a good thing after 9 years? Value for the taxpayer dollar. Now, we're also creating opportunities for families, as I mentioned earlier, across-the-board personal tax cuts, a fairer tax system, encouraging investment in production in New Zealand and productive businesses. Now, what will these tax cuts mean to people, Mr. Speaker? Well, this is the biggest tax reform of the New Zealand tax system for nearly 25 years. In fact, it was near on 9 years since New Zealanders last received a tax cut, at least coming up to the last election. In fact, many New Zealanders who are out there working now probably don't remember what a tax cut was. Well, we've provided incentives for New Zealanders to get ahead. We're cutting their personal taxes, something that wasn't done over Labour's 9 years in economic office, when the country, and it's fair to say, was going through a time of economic boom. Compensation for the small increase in GST, and we're making it easier for companies to do business in New Zealand, encouraging them to stay here and to create jobs for New Zealanders. We're also making the tax system fairer, Mr. Speaker, closing the loopholes that have allowed many high-income earners to dodge their responsibilities or legally move their funds aside so that those who are able to pay tax are paying more. Now, another example, Mr. Speaker, of what this will mean for people out in the country. And a young person in Rotorua who works in a supermarket and earns just over $26,000 a year, who flats and spends $100 each week on rent, will be nearly $350 a year better off because of these tax cuts. It's even after taking into account the increase in GST. A family that earns $50,000 a year or less with 2 children effectively now pays no tax when you factor in working for families and in-work tax credits. And in both of these examples, these hard-working Kiwis will be paying a top tax rate of 17.5%. That's down from 33% just 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm yet to meet anybody that says actually